Attention!
Welcome to the Film Mages Podcast, where the popcorn is our ammunition, the couch is our foxhole, and the cinema is a place of worship.
Now let me see your war face. Ah!
Ooh.
We are live.
We are live for the first time.
Yep.
Most definitely nothing catastrophically embarrassing happened for Zach. Nothing that made Zach reconsider his whole life on this earth. But
yes.
You know what? I'm going to try to stay positive because
You're
it's
doing a good
spooky
job.
season.
Yeah, it is spooky season. My favorite season of all.
And it's your first time saying that.
Yes, it is.
No
the
one-
most magical time of year. I know our listeners are very excited that we're finally jumping into this. Yeah, this is really special. And as you have never mentioned before, this is the first time for our show that we have had a repeat of a themed month.
Indeed.
And there is no more fitting choice than spooky season coming back. It's our favorite season. It's our favorite month. We should go ahead and introduce ourselves. Who are you?
I'm Zach.
I'm Mick.
I think I'm Alexis.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Hope nothing changed
I think I'm Alexis.
And, you know, you may hear
What was that voice?
a disembodied specter.
We have, we have a special treat for our listeners. We are starting spooky season right by having a very, very special couple of guests. Who do we have with us on the airwaves? Take it away.
Hi, I'm Dalton Deschain.
Hi, I'm Dylan Roth. I'm introducing myself to you for the very first time.
And
It's
we
so nice to
are
meet
the
you.
hosts of the podcast, Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? The show where we take the 2017 Tom Cruise Mummy movie and treat it like our Bible for building a cinematic universe the size of the MCU. That's our Iron Man, and we have been building an Infinity Saga based off that movie. We are 13 movies deep.
We are about to launch Phase 3.
Phase 3 launches October 22nd on a podcatcher near you. And yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, of
For
course.
spooky season. And of course, there was a ghost in the machine that haunted your
ghost in the
recording
machine.
equipment.
Yeah. Our initial recording of this podcast got, dragged down to hell like, the protagonist of Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell.
That's a good movie, actually.
That is a good movie. I love that
enjoyed
movie.
it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But yes, it is such a pleasure to have you two on the show. I have been a
seriously.
massive fan of your show for about a year now.
Thank you.
Off the air, I told you two that it was the last good thing that Twitter ever brought me. Before it too was claimed into the ghostly ether.
Engulfed in musk.
And yeah, it is it is an absolute pleasure to have you two on.
It is a pleasure to be
Yeah,
here.
happy to be here very much.
Yeah. This.
Happy to be part of the last gasp of a dying empire and a dying internet empire.
Yeah, for real.
Well, I guess make that last gasp rattle.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much for being on our show. Not to put any pressure on anybody here, but this now makes us legitimate. This legitimizes our show. We're real now. We have proof.
People we've never met came and talked to us in our technically worst episode since our first mixer we tried to use sparked and died during our very first recording.
Yeah, actually sparked.
Oh yeah, there was actual arcing electricity.
Yeah.
Someone very nicely gave us a free mixer.
Yeah.
And
that's true, actually. I've never really thought about that, but look how far we've come. Literally, the first time we tried to record, our device caught fire.
I still have the video of Zach trying to open that shit up to be like, yeah, I just don't know what's wrong with it.
yeah, I was
Just imagining just opening up the board and literal smoke rising cartoon style, or in an old movie when you pop the hood of a car that's malfunctioning, of course, there's a huge smoke machine in there.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so, that it really wasn't too far off from that. While this was an embarrassing blunder, it is not the worst thing that has happened while recording.
So this might make you feel better, but remember how I told you earlier this week that my work laptop just, died, couldn't turn it on, literally scoured the internet just, looking for things before I called the tech guy, and then fucking UPS this shit to the fucking tech guy, and he called me yesterday to be like, oh yeah, I can't find anything wrong with it, it totally turned on once it got here, and I was like
Nice.
And he's like,
Very
that's
cool.
Such good news,
Very cool.
isn't it? I'm like,
Yeah.
for the computer,
Yeah.
not for my ego.
Yeah. That's
I'm
easy
sad.
fix. Problem
So,
solved and
yeah,
cheap.
I was like,
Now
oh,
with
that's
your
great.
computer-
I'll get my laptop back sooner. I love that for me. I look like a fucking dumbass.
But did that leave you wondering what's
it's-
going on?
Not really. Oh, there it is.
Wow.
That's a
Guys.
slick transition.
Welcome to our super
Yeah, that's a
famous
segue.
segment. What's going on? It's your first time here. How
Yeah.
does
It's
it
the
feel?
famous segment.
It feels so
It's
good.
what the
It's such
true
an honor
honor-
to be inside of what's going on.
In my entire life, I have never been asked what's going on. And now, like Marge Simpson encountering the GPS system from the Canyon Arrow and just her heart swelling when the machine asks you, where would you like to go today? I'm so excited to tell you what's going on.
Amazing.
That was a really, really, really specific reference. I'm sorry.
What's going on with
That
me right now
was-
is my cat is trying to eat
I enjoyed
my
it, though.
headphone cable.
Cats are wont to do.
Yes.
The creator of The Simpsons is from our neck of the woods in Oregon, so
Springfield,
we
baby.
appreciate that.
Yeah. If you are a new listener or if you have been grandfathered in from this other show that we're having a little collab with, you don't know what our infamous segment, What's Going On, is. We like to talk about things in life that have been happening with us, or more specifically, movies or television that we've seen that we would like to share and discuss. So we should have our guest take it away first, Dalton or Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan's never been asked this question.
That's
so,
right.
That's true, and I
I'd
cannot
really love
wait.
it if he could
Because
just
I'm
hop
from
in.
Jersey. I've been asked how you doing a lot of times, but no one has ever asked
Hey, how
me
you
what's
doing?
going
Oh,
on.
how you doing?
And it
Yeah,
feels
it's a
like
regional difference.
Completely reshapes the question for me. But I guess I'll stick to movies since that's what we talk about here. And I just I went to go to I recently published a review of The Creator, which you can find at observer.com. That is the new Gareth Edwards science fiction war epic about a future where there is sort of a man versus machine AI conflict, but in a twist that is not really a twist because they basically hand it to you about 5 minutes into the movie. We're bad, and the AI is very good. So the movie is also pretty good. And I'm always excited about new original science fiction movies. Sci-fi is my bag. And I'm getting a little bit exhausted, as I think most of you are, about reboots and adaptations.
Don't say that. That's our whole podcast.
That's true.
Our podcast depends on people
Unless,
being
of course,
invested
you
in
really
cinematic
want
universes.
a huge cinematic universe based on Universal monsters and then other random Universal properties that we throw into the mix, which case, obviously, the market is alive and well and excited.
Yes.
But I really wish I could report that The Creator was like an incredible, mind-blowing movie that's going to be like the next great science fiction epic. Truth is, it's just very good. I think it's a great looking movie. I love that it is very loudly and unambiguously anti-imperialist. And just the fact that it was made for $80 million when it looks like it was made for $300 million is just really mind-blowing to me. So I would really love for it to make money because if this thing can't turn a profit, I have no idea how any movie like it is ever going to get greenlit ever again.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I also caught The Creator yesterday in IMAX, and it is really, really gorgeous. The mind boggles that this was made for $80 million. The production design, the world building, as I've again never said before, it reminds me a lot of James Cameron's Avatar, with its
Which is exactly the way to pitch a movie to me.
Yeah, highly detailed, so well realized. John David Washington is so good at it. Ken Watanabe also killed it.
Ken Watanabe's in this?
He's so good.
Always so good.
There are the Village scene. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the village siege, I think, is one of the better sequences, at least action sequences, to come out in a long time. And it reminded me a lot of anime, because I like that Ken Watanabe, he's just speaking in his native tongue. He's just speaking Japanese in this very intense battle, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. Again, the production design, as a huge fan of sci-fi concept art for movies that have either been made or never made at all, it's like everything that I love has all been put into one movie. The architecture, the design of the robots, the ships, the what's called the Nomad. Is that what it is?
There's this suborbital weapons platform called the Nomad that has this kind of T-shaped structure, but with like a ring. It's an interesting sort of what feels like a real icon for the movie. Like it is futuristic. It feels a little bit otherworldly, and I love that in the film it kind of stands in for the omnipresent threat of drone strikes under which many countries live. Because it just travels from place to place into various sovereign countries. In this case, to New Asia, the sort of future stand-in for the entire South and East Asia block. And they'll just fucking bomb you and expect there to be no consequences. So
private domestic airspace be damned. It goes wherever it pleases, wherever the United States government pleases. It really does set you up. I was like, this is an anti-AI film. A pro-AI film, but really, as Dylan made a really good point before, it is so much about othering and just basically, as you said, anti-imperialist, and it's just really forward-thinking, and I really liked it. Again, the story isn't super remarkable, but it is solid. It is a solid film that you should check out. And also, I didn't mention Allison Janney. Holy shit!
Allison Janney as like the fucking the equivalent to like the nasty general in Avatar, but it's Allison Janney, and I'm like more sympathetic, more of a character, right? And like she's like a top 10 character actor on my list. But like
100%. Lost alumnus, Allison Janney,
exactly, and it was an event when she showed up on Lost. That was a big deal. Has never done a Star Trek though. If I have to have one strike against her, Allison Janney has never done a Star Trek. I just love that I get to see her do something that I've never seen her do before. And she's great.
Yeah. I'm glad you said the general from Avatar, because it is really like if they hadn't cast Stephen Lang as General Quaritch and they had gotten Allison Janney, this is what we would have gotten. And oh my God, she kills it. So good.
That sounds amazing. That really sells me on the film. It is Colonel Miles Quaritch, and
is it? Oh, it's Colonel, right? It's not
that.
General.
All
right, my bad.
I'm furious.
Hey, my bad. I said General first. This one's on me.
Hey, listen, Mick could have corrected you. Mick is this with Stephen Lang,
Slang. His name's Slang. He likes to go by Slang.
Have you been on set with Stephen Lang? Is that the bit? Is that the bit that we're talking about?
I have. Yeah,
Mick is obsessed with Stephen Lang.
He's one of the few actors I've worked with that I actually got starstruck when I saw him, because he in this movie I worked with him on. He's playing this very, very, very old man, and he walked on set and he's wearing his old man clothes and he's hunched over, and I go, oh my God, damn, I guess it was a while ago when he made Avatar, so he's really aged. And then we break for lunch. So he's not in character anymore, and his posture straightens up. He takes off his old man cardigan, and he's wearing a tank top underneath, and this man is shredded. And I was like, oh, no.
Well, that's his whole character in Don't Breathe, is the shredded old man.
Yes.
Which, if you're following along with Zach's Halloween Spooktacular, actually might be the movie that I have selected to watch for tonight.
Ooh.
Really?
Yeah.
The original Don't Breathe?
Don't Breathe is on the list. Sorry?
The first Don't Breathe?
Yes, the first Don't Breathe. I never watched the second one.
I haven't either.
You know who this guy should be? He should be the good guy in the sequel.
Yeah, there was
it's such a weird premise.
Me was like, yeah. No part of me saw the actions of the blind man in Don't Breathe, and I was like, this is the guy who I want to be on the side of.
I've had a phobia of turkey basters ever since I've seen Don't Breathe.
Horrifying.
Look, I trust Fede Alvarez, and I'm very excited for his Alien movie, but I don't think I can follow him into Don't Breathe 2, where we're rooting for the semen baster man.
I'm sorry.
That's a bridge too far for me.
I haven't seen this movie. I have not seen Don't Breathe, and I did not see that particular twist in the conversation coming at all.
Yeah, that there's a turkey baster full of semen.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Yep.
And the stirrups, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards.
Well, I guess I don't have to even see it now that I know the big twist is that there's a turkey baster full of semen.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Just
That's
going to
all
add
you
it to my
get. That's the big
letterbox
reveal.
list of movies that were within a plot important on-screen cum. 1 second. So we got The Green Knight, and now Don't Breathe.
Oh, yeah,
Gotcha.
the Green Knight has a good sploosh.
Wonderful. Dalton, have you seen any films recently?
Well, as I was saying before we got on air, Dylan and I, for our bonus podcast, just had to rank all 13 Halloween movies. So basically, I've only been watching Halloween movies and then the movies for today. But I did, in between watching our movies for today's podcast and the Halloween movies, I squeezed in No One Will Save You, the new Hulu film starring Caitlin Dever by
Ryan Duffield.
Yes, Duffield. The alien invasion movie that famously has one line of dialogue in it. And I liked it. Maybe it's the same thing. I actually kind of think I feel the same way about Dylan, or as Dylan does about The Creator, where it's like, I'm really glad movies like this are being made. And I think it was really good, but maybe not great, you know? And I think one of the appeals of a movie like this is the sort of formal constraint. I really like when a movie, you know, does a big swing like this, where it's like, all right, we're going to make this movie with no dialogue. But then you're kind of watching the movie to see how they pull it off, which this movie does. I think it absolutely justifies its no dialogue moments. But I also feel like the way that you would... Maybe like the ideal way to pull something like that off is a movie where you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, wait, I don't think that movie had any dialogue in it. You know, where it's like just so natural that you don't even realize that it's something they're trying to do. And this doesn't really do that. You're very aware. There's like scenes. A lot of the movie is just Caitlin Dever. And it makes sense that she wouldn't be talking because she has no one to talk to. But in like the parts where she like goes into town and interacts with characters, it's like... Yes, okay, it's justified why they're not talking, but also I can see it kind of trying to make her not talk. And so it all works, but maybe wouldn't work as much on a rewatch once you know kind of how it pulls off the constraint. But it's really scary. It's well staged. It's consistently surprising. I think it's like the ideal Halloween month streaming movie, right? Like it's October, you're browsing around for like something kind of spooky and new to watch. Like, yeah, throw it on. It's great.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I would like to give it a rewatch because again, I was pretty fried when I watched that film. But I will say one thing I did appreciate about that movie is I did enjoy the boldness of like its kind of Twilight Zone-esque ending.
Sure, yeah.
I appreciated where that movie ended up. I didn't necessarily love the journey, but also I was operating on like, you know, less than 5 hours of sleep. So maybe I'd be more positive about it on a rewatch.
I think I'm going to check it out. Both of you have kind of sold me on it. Because people are enjoying it, right? Like it's getting press right now. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. The ending works really well. I'm not a huge fan of the creature design, and sort of like the movements of the creature is like seemed very intentional, but just didn't really super work for me. There's a very specific like style of motion they have that like almost kind of felt like they were like stop motion a little bit. Like it gave some like Harryhausen vibes, but I don't know, for some reason didn't super work for me. It also reminded me a lot of Prey, right? And I think maybe it's just because Disney is dumping all of the 20th Century Studio movies on Hulu without theatrical releases that probably deserve them. And, you know, I think Prey is the sort of better of the two. But as far as like, sort of like formally experimental takes on sort of classic alien stuff, these sort of feel like a pair.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, plus Prey has your girl Amber Midthunder in it, who, you know, where else can you find Amber Midthunder, hypothetically?
Well, you can pretend that Amber Midthunder is in our films, as we do. because when we were casting our Wolfman films, I had just seen Prey, and like everyone else was like, holy shit, that's a movie star. And so immediately cast her in one of the main roles that recurs throughout our thing. Now, obviously, it's important that for legal purposes, that I specify that Amber Midthunder has absolutely no involvement, and as far as we know, knowledge of our program.
Does not know we exist.
But yes, in our fantasy casting, because we always pick an actor, a real actor who will perform the character. Yes, she plays Gwen Conliffe, the wolf woman in our universe.
And coming up in phase 3, you can catch her in the movie I'll be pitching first, which is A Native American Werewolf in Paris.
Hell yeah.
Amber Midthunder will be taking center stage in that film.
I love that.
Listen, we've got a
Native American Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Well, we've got a third roommate who's not on the show who worked on Prey.
That's right.
You know,
nice.
you're a few degrees of separation from Amber Midthunder. We'll try to get her on the horn. We'll
Absolutely.
get her on the show. I mean,
oh my God, if we could have her
Hollywood should
voice
be on
her
the phone for
character
her.
in the next crossover.
Yeah, it's definitely not a
Hell
shortcut
yeah.
for us getting sued in any way. It's not going to get us any faster to the cease and desist that Universal will probably inevitably give to us, even though I think technically, I'm pretty sure we've been pretty careful about
think we're in
being
the
about
clear.
fair use. We
We're
are
in the
in
clear.
no way competing with any product they have.
That's like it would give you a lot of street cred though to like actually get a cease and desist from Universal.
It'd be great
Studios.
press. Great PR for
no.
us.
It's like
That
how they do
knows
the
you're doing
rooftop
something
concert
right.
at the end of Let It Be, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna get fucking arrested at the end of our concert movie. That's gonna be the perfect end for the last Beatles movie." And then they just say, "Turn that down," and that's it.
Yeah. It's a bit loud, isn't it?
Well, do we have anything else going on? I have one quick Halloween-based question for both of you.
Sure.
How do we feel about Halloween 3 Season of the Witch?
We love it.
We just did this actually as a movie night for our Discord, for our patrons. We do movie nights with them, and the whole Discord loved it. We loved it. It's the Halloween movie I think both of us have seen the most. It fucking rocks. All-star banger.
I'm in the same boat. I think I have seen Halloween 3 more than the original Halloween.
I've never seen it.
Oh, buddy.
Okay.
Treat yourself.
Check it out.
It's currently
Is it-
streaming
is
on
it that
Peacock.
good,
You
huh?
got to check it out.
It's incredible. I mean,
Who's in it? Is it
Tom Atkins.
really?
No other big names in it. Tom Atkins. No other
Atkins.
big names. No other big names. No one as big as Tom Atkins.
Dick
right?
Warlock. Dick
no,
Warlock
come on.
is in it. Who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2? Plays a I don't want to spoil, but
Listen, more important than who's in it is who's not in it, and it has no Michael Myers.
there is no
and,
Michael Myers in Halloween 3.
It is its own self-contained Halloween movie, and it is so weird. Don't look up anything.
Don't-
because
yeah, go
part
into
of
it
the fun
completely
is
blind.
it is a mystery. But the nature of the mystery is such that even though in hindsight all the clues are there, you will never in a million years guess where it's going.
Every
Really?
single scene in
is-
that movie is so shocking and surprising because it's the movie an insane person would write. And
Interesting.
it's lovely. The movie Halloween exists in this movie as a movie. The characters watch Halloween on TV in the film Halloween 3.
That is so weird. Honestly, you're giving me the way you're describing it is giving me sleepaway camp vibes, where it's like this movie at every turn will just fucking shock you. Is it like that, or just like not that it's
It's
offensive?
less problematic.
It's less problematic, but
Less
just as
transphobic
crazy.
for sure.
Well, good.
But-
That's a good start.
It is. Okay, actually, I haven't seen Sleepaway Camp. I've only heard the takes about Sleepaway Camp, so I'll let Dalton answer this question.
I actually haven't seen Sleepaway Camp either.
Oh.
Should be on my list.
Really?
Yeah, got to be
Oh
on my
my
list
goodness.
this year.
It's a fucking bizarre film.
Yeah, it's a hard one to like recommend. It's like because I don't want you to watch it, but
And
if
the
you
ending
do,
is not very chill.
no, it's that. But it's like
I
yeah.
love the
Your brother said
deaths
it best.
in Sleepaway Camp. I caught that like on the TV, you know, like when we still had cable and you would just have to catch movies like as they were on. I caught
Yeah.
Sleepaway Camp and I think Sleepaway Camp 2 that way.
Ooh.
And some of my favorite horror deaths are in, I think, Sleepaway Camp 2, or maybe it's 1. Whichever one has the battery acid, I'm here for that.
I need to watch
seen
these.
the second
Halloween
one.
3 actually has some of my favorite horror movie deaths. I think the deaths are very unique in that film.
Yeah, and it is
right, you all
weirdly
sell
and
me
in
on
totally
this.
other ways. It is kind of, it's mostly goofy scary, but a couple of points just like really viscerally, what the fuck is this scary?
Yeah. It's gnarly.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, I think that unless we have anything else, Alexis, have you seen any films, or have you perhaps been to a hockey game?
Yeah,
Which of
that's
those
crazy
two?
that you would ask, because, I haven't seen you since I went to this hockey game.
Yeah, and it's so nice to see you.
Yeah, to preface this, I am not a sports person, never have been, probably never will be, but I'm just out here fucking eating my words on the daily at this point, because that shit was so much fucking fun. Like, we got, did a little tailgate, got a little tipsy, and then proceeded to be the most annoying fucking people in that fucking arena area. Like, I was enjoying myself so much, but I was also mildly embarrassed by the antics of everything around me. But yeah, somebody started a fight, and I was like, hell yeah. So yeah.
The platonic ideal of a hockey experience.
Yeah, I feel if I went to a hockey game and there wasn't any like embarrassing and clumsy violence, that I would feel as if I'd been ripped off. Like, I would want my money back.
Right? Like, as soon as somebody like slammed into the wall right in front of my face, I was like, hell yeah, this is what I came here for.
Yes. And I know that I said this to you already in the previous take, but in case anyone listening is hearing this and thinking that actually sounds like fun, I really highly recommend going to a local pro wrestling show, because that same energy plus the violence is like staged, and so there's a little bit less guilt about like feeling. I don't know if that's a thing that you experience, but like I can't get into real blood sports because I'm like, oh, that guy's in pain. I don't like that. And granted, pro wrestlers experience a lot of pain. It hurts like hell to be a pro wrestler, but they have all been like, no, I know I'm about to get dropped on my shoulders, or I'm going to exaggerate my pain. It's, it's theatrical violence. A friend of mine really nailed it when she called it masculine burlesque. I think it's just one of the finest art forms you can experience live.
That's similar. I've always described wrestling as if a bunch of stuntmen got together to perform a musical without any songs.
But sometimes there are.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are songs. Occasionally someone will break out a guitar and we'll play a couple chords before he smashes it on somebody's head.
MJF and Jericho did an entire musical number on AEW.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, we're
That
getting
is
deep in the weeds.
so the right way to sell pro wrestling to this podcast.
Yeah.
I should get into it, because the one episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe that I have yet to listen to is the WWE crossover. I have no context for that.
We did do a WrestleMania crossover episode that featured WWE superstars wrestling the Invisible Man.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's canon. Like, you can get away with
we
skipping,
did
but
make it canon.
it is canon. So those events could be referenced in future episodes.
As we all know, The
originally-
Miz is canonically dead.
Well, we thought that right, because the Miz was supposed to be at the wedding and then get killed. So
Yeah, we were going to kill off the
Canonically
WWE
dead.
superstars, but we didn't put it on screen.
it was too distracting from the story we were trying to tell.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about as good a place as any to wrap up this segment.
Perfect.
Let's hop out of what's going on. So we're back, and it's spooky season. And we're ready for our big topic.
We are. I think we're all ready for the big topic, which is a good.
fired up for the big topic.
This is a good big topic to kick off spooky season.
Well, it felt like a big topic that, could not be more appropriate for our distinguished guests here.
Yes.
And that is, who are the most sympathetic movie monsters It's a trope that,
There's
really
some good ones.
Really kicked off during the classic Universal monster films and has, remained present in the genre to this day. So, Dylan and Dalton, we'll throw to you first. Who's a horror movie monster who has your guys' sympathy?
Well, I think in the spirit of our show, which is all about the Universal classic monsters, we got to give the shout out to Frankenstein's monster, the original sympathetic monster. Really set the template for sympathetic monsters going forward. He didn't ask to be created. He was brought into this world and then immediately despised from the moment of his creation. Everyone was like, what a disgusting little freak. And he's he's an infant, essentially. He was just born. He has no intelligence emotionally or, otherwise. He is just a little baby boy in a huge, disgusting body. And everyone's like, we got to fucking kill that thing. We got to get the torches and the pitchforks because it's nasty. And he's just a guy. He's just a little baby boy. And so it's kind of the first instance of the audience being asked to both be frightened of something and then kind of feel bad for being frightened of him because
to have empathy for him.
He is innocent. He kills a little girl, but totally accidentally.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
Yeah,
He's
he doesn't
just a
know
big
his
guy.
own. Yeah, exactly. He's like Jack from The Shining. He doesn't know his own strength.
Well, hold on.
He's like Jack from the movie Jack. He's a lot bigger than he should
be. Never in my life did I think we were going to draw a connection between the film Jack and Frankenstein, but I'm so happy we've gotten here.
Yeah.
I watched the original Frankenstein movies, largely because, the Universal monsters have been on my brain more as I've listened to your guys' show. Mm-hmm. And I was at the Amoeba Music on Hollywood Boulevard and came across a box set of Blu-rays that's, the classic Universal monster films. And
that's a great find.
So far, the undisputed two best of the bunch, in my opinion, are the two Frankenstein films. And
James Whale's Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are especially Bride, they're fucking untouchable.
James Whale, the GOAT.
Yeah, Bride is so incredible. And, as a big lumbering man, I feel seen, I feel represented. All you really want to do is, have some drinks and smoke a cigar with a blind guy. And, let him live.
I have a question, though. Dylan and Dalton, I think it was on your last show, you said that there was one of the Universal monster movies was filmed during the day, and then at night the Spanish version was filmed.
Yeah, the 31 Dracula.
Yeah.
And the Spanish Dracula is personally, I prefer it. I think it's really cool that they had, for one thing, the sort of, it gets to be a little bit more... I guess a little bit more erotic, because they're less the Spanish crew was less prudish than the English speaking crew. But more than that, they got to see the dailies of what the English language crew was doing and saying, I can do better.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so it's like shot for shot, it's more interesting.
This was actually the norm at the time. Once talkies came around, it was a problem for the studios because when they were silent movies, they could ship them off to international markets and just put different, the dialogue cards or whatever in different languages. Once they were actually in a language, there weren't subtitles at the time, so it was like, well, okay, now we're making Dracula, but we can only sell this to English-speaking audiences. So for a lot of movies, they would have international versions filmed with actors and crews that spoke different languages using the same sets and costumes because it was already paid for. And so the Dracula one is notable because, first of all, the print survived and most of them haven't, but also because contemporary critics think that it is better or at least as good as the 31 Dracula. And like Dylan was saying, the Spanish crew would come in, see what they did and be like, okay, we need to one up the English crew and do something scarier or do something more daring. The 31 Dracula uses a lot of film techniques that weren't even normal at the time. A lot of camera movements that weren't being done by standard Hollywood people. And it's on Blu-ray. Actually, I have one of the 4K box sets of the Universal Monster movies, and it includes the Spanish version of the 31 Dracula. They have done a proper restoration and
it might be on your Blu-ray, depending on when your set was released.
On your Blu-ray,
what I really wish they would do
definitely
is
check that
make
out.
it without having to like throw all the files into your computer and like set them up. I would love to be able to watch them literally side by side. I watched them back to back earlier this year and got to really cement the feeling. Like, I really love the Spanish version, but I think it would be really cool to like sync them up scene for scene and shot for shot.
Fascinating.
That sounds so neat.
God, can you imagine if that was just the common practice that kept going throughout cinema? Is like every story has like 5 different versions shot, like the Yiddish Star Wars. Like that would have been so cool. It's a shame they didn't keep going with that.
I would have loved to see that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dylan.
Well,
who's your sympathetic?
Dalton picked the big one.
On.
Oh, sorry. We have a slight delay and like your voice will cut out. So I thought you were just saying Dylan. And then I started talking, but you were trying to set up a later thing. And now I'm talking through it, which is probably, I'm sure, really great radio.
Who's your monster?
I didn't get any of that.
Who's your monster, Dylan?
Well, Dalton Bailey picked the big one. I mean, Frankenstein's monster is the OG. But I was thinking about how I'm typically not super scared by horror movies, but I get freaked out by zombies a lot because I had like a big freak out about like viruses and like and contagions in general when I was in high school that I didn't really get over until we had to live through an actual pandemic, and then kind of had to get over it. But the zombie movies really freak me out in a particular way. But one of the things I really like about them is that they work your entire emotional spectrum because they are scary, right? But they also always take time, like the good ones, take time to have you kind of laugh at the like ridiculousness of the zombies. And then especially in like a good Romero zombie movie, you get a little period of time where you start to feel bad for them. You start to like watch them lumbering around and realize that like this is what's left of what used to be a person. And maybe it's somebody that you know, or maybe it's just a stranger and you're like you're watching them lumber through the mall or across the graveyard and you think, man, it absolutely sucks to be a zombie. Like, I have to blow this thing away or whatever. But like nobody here wanted to be a zombie. Now they're just a shell of what used to be a person. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, man, what a fucking shame this whole thing is. And I always appreciate the way that when a good zombie movie takes you through that full spectrum of emotion, they just spare a little bit of time to think about the tragedy of the whole thing. And I don't know, it speaks to me.
I think that's a great pick. When I was conceptualizing this as a topic, a specific zombie that kind of popped into my head is the one that's kind of being kept as a pet in 28 Days Later.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment of like recognition that Cillian Murphy and this thing that used to be a person have when he frees it. There's a moment where they kind of like lock eyes, and it is that like, oh, this used to be someone.
Those are still the eyes of a human being in a way, and you can still see that. Yeah, interesting.
Good pick.
Good pick. I have one just off the top of my head, and it's a pretty fresh pick for me. But again, I just rewatched Zach Cregger's Barbarian, and The Mother. The Mother is a very, very sad, tragic movie monster.
She's not really the villain of the movie.
She's not the villain, but she is the movie monster. And it is so tragic, her whole story. She just wants to breastfeed. She just wants to nurture. She just wants to do what she believes is right and to protect her babies, especially with her horrible, 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 really monster of a dad and the awful things that she must have endured and living that whole life in her cave. Because the first time you see her, I don't know about y'all, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. And then when AJ, I think his name is, right?
Yeah.
AJ, he falls into the trap and she's still down there. And she's trying to feed with the little baby bottle that has way too many hairs on the tip of it, and it really freaks me out. That whole thing, I'm just like, I hate this. I really, really hate it. But when I rewatched it again the other day, the ending scene after AJ throws her off the roof and Mother jumps off
to save Ted
and saves her, and nearly you think she sacrificed her life for her. Mm-hmm. And then thankfully she's still alive and gouges out AJ's eyes and turns them to jelly and then rips his skull open like it's a melon. And she's like looking at her the mother is looking at her wounds and is like pointing like, I need to take you back and like I need to protect you. And she just slowly like points the gun to her. And I teared up.
Yeah, well,
I actually teared up. It's really
is,
sad.
It really is that Frankenstein thing of like this, kind of innocent
child
mind in a body that has too much strength.
Yes.
Yeah. It's, I also really wish that, the Walt Disney Company would answer my emails about how technically, because they purchased 20th Century Fox and because they did the distribution of this movie, that does make the mother a Disney princess and she should be in the park.
Yes, absolutely.
And I can't wait till they open Barbarian Land at Disney World, which is...
Yes.
You get to go into the tunnels that they already have built.
I mean, it's true. The big secret under. I would love to pay $160 for a 5-minute meet and greet with the mother from Barbarian.
I know. Yeah, when you look at how big the ride is, how big the tunnel system is, you're like, oh, hell yeah. Mm-hmm. Just start measuring that shit, have a good time.
Yeah, well, good pick, buddy.
Of course.
Arguably our episode that I'm proudest of, our Barbarian one. Just love that film. Alexis.
Yeah, so honestly, kind of similarly relating to Barbarian. So I think we can all agree that Alien Resurrection, not a great movie.
Agreed.
I was thinking of this on my car ride over. That's such a good pick. I was thinking of this answer on my car ride over. That's a perfect pick.
Okay, so I haven't seen the movie in a few years. I think I saw all of the Alien movies for the first time a few years ago, and I was at work and the tail end of Alien Resurrection was going on, and it's just the scene where Sigourney Weaver, who she's been recreated, so she's a little bit more alien than she is human in some ways.
She's a clone of herself
this, kind of
with some xenomorph in her.
Psychic emotional connection to this almost mother alien character figure. And I mean the fucking alien literally kills this shitty dude for her, and then follows her onto the vessel that they're boarding to take off from this bad situation they were at. And the alien mother's there, and her and Sigourney Weaver are having a moment. And to be honest, Sigourney Weaver's the fucking goat, because there is so much emotion in her eyes during this scene that I literally only caught these 10 minutes of this scene, and I started tearing up. I felt so bad for the alien, because then she just opens the hatch and she starts to get sucked out from this tiny little hole, and you just see little bits of the alien just falling into space. And the last thing you see is her little face, and I was like, she just wanted to help her baby.
Well, it's also been a while for me since watching Alien Resurrection, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the xenomorph in Alien Resurrection is a human xenomorph hybrid. Yeah. And Ripley is also a clone of herself, but has some xenomorph in her. Mm-hmm. And so in this sort of weird way, the xenomorph that you're talking about and Ripley is actually a mother and daughter. Yeah. You can kind of trace that. Am I thinking of that correctly?
Yeah, because the reason why they created the xenomorph in Alien Resurrection, they wanted her to have a full there's a baby making system. Why am I blanking on the scientific term for that?
Reproductive system.
You know, like
reproductive organs,
the respiratory system. What's the one for the making? You know, it doesn't matter. This is not a scientific podcast. I clearly didn't
the respiratory
pass my
system for the make and
or
bake.
something. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. So she has reproductive organs. Reproductive organs, yeah.
Yep.
There it is.
There it is again.
I love the leg. I love the leg on this show.
I did say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been having
good.
some chopping over the Zoom call for sure.
I like respiratory though. That's
Yeah, no, let's go with
You're
that.
so
Respiratory
close.
of the
Yes.
make and bake bits.
Yeah, so close.
I would like to commend everyone on this show's ability to sell me on the idea of watching movies that are generally not considered very good.
That's right. You haven't seen
I
Resurrection.
have not seen Resurrection, and you guys are getting me to want to watch it.
It's
you
way
could
better
see
than
it
Alien
once.
3.
Yeah.
I will say that again. I'll say it again.
Winona Ryder's also in it, and she's so cute.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, no, she's fantastic in it. I think it's a fun movie. I think it's really good. Because again, the scene where the xenomorph gets like sucked out into the vacuum of space, like at least how I read it is like the xenomorph is looking at Ripley kind of like, "Aw, like why are you killing me?"
Yeah,
Like,
it has
like, I
this
love you
mommy
and I
why
protect you.
thing. It is real. It is genuinely affecting. I
really
did
is.
get a little emotional as you're describing it. And I guess to an extent, like the Joss Whedon-fication of like all genre movie dialogue now and like plot structure probably makes Alien Resurrection just kind of feel like a regular movie in hindsight. Like we just gotten used to it as much as the guy is kind of like gross. We've all kind of gotten used to the effect that he's had, positive or negative, on like just how movies are. So I wonder if it just wouldn't stand out in that way anymore. You are going to provoke the ire of a lot of big Halloween 3 defenders, though, because I feel like there's apparently a spectrum of Alien fans, or there are the Alien 3 apologists and the Resurrection apologists. And right now, the Alien 3 apologists are winning on the online discourse. They're very loud and they're very passionate.
Wait, who's winning? You said Alien 3?
Alien 3?
Yeah.
Ugh, why?
Wow.
I don't get it.
That's a tough... I mean, I also haven't seen Alien 3. I've seen all the Ridley Scott ones and Alien and Aliens.
I just...
Because it has Danny McBride in it.
Of course.
Yes.
I love Resurrection because, like, Sigourney Weaver's just kind of, like, yoked out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we can't go wrong. It's like, Dalton was talking about how a Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis is automatically gets like the bonus. It's if an Alien movie has Sigourney Weaver in it, it can only you can't sink below a certain level because she just brings it.
Yeah.
And also, she really hits that basketball shot. She really does
I was
do
going
it
to say,
behind
it
the
has a
shot.
basketball scene in it. That's how you know she's part xenomorphish, because she sinks that fucker.
That's like the one thing I know about this movie.
No, Sigweave is an
Also,
all-timer.
again-
She's the fucking goat.
The fact that Brad Dourif has a xenomorph fetish in the film, like, I say
I'm
more?
seeing this movie. I'm watching this movie.
It's an alien movie with Ron Perlman. Zach.
Ron Perlman's in it.
Perlman
Ron
is in this.
Perlman.
Yes.
Love that
Brad
man.
Dourif
All right.
adds a star to any movie that he's in. We actually were talking
Yes.
about
Yeah,
that.
because I hate Rob Zombie's Halloween too, but Brad Dourif is so good in it that I can't completely dismiss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, what a legend. I mean,
Because when Brad Dourif looks at the xenomorph and it's just like, I want to lick you, and like licks the glass, like, what is happening right now?
God. Okay, please say no more. I am now genuinely very psyched to watch this movie. I'll be brief about my sympathetic monster pick, just because I talk about this movie a lot. But mine would be Brundlefly from The Fly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's listen, that's he's an insect that dreamed he was a man and loved it, but now that dream is almost over.
I'm glad you said The Fly, because I looked it up here and I got chills when I looked at the cast, and Jeff Goldblum is Seth Brundle and David Cronenberg plays the gynecologist, and I went, ugh,
Oh my god,
that's a terrifying thing right there.
Having David Cronenberg as your gynecologist.
That is
What the hell? There wasn't an ear down there before.
I think you're actually just talking about a nightmare that I've had before. You just look down at the
Oh no, I got Cronenberg.
No, get away, please.
Cronenberg's just like looking for the vagina on like the stomach, and he's like, I don't see it. It's not there.
He's like, I gotta cut into it.
Yeah, you wanted a couple extra, right? I'm here to install some extra vaginas in various parts of your body.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm only seeing one, and that doesn't feel right at all.
I don't know if you've heard, but surgery is the new sex, so everyone back off. Okay?
That is true. That is
Surgery
true.
is the new sex.
What I gotta say about Brundlefly, though, that I think is interesting is that's a movie where you also get put through the ringer, where you have this guy going through this transformation and you oscillate between pity and revulsion because he exhausts the pity that you have for him from a situation through his actions. But then there's also this sort of there's this sort of recursive nature of it, which is, all right, if his actions are being driven by horrible instincts that are part of his transformation, for how much of it is he really responsible? And then it also kind of think like, yeah, but was he really this guy from the beginning? Can you kind of trace back this creepiness of this character to his pre-transformation self? So like, how much of what you pity or what you fear or like respond like viscerally negative to is about the fly, and how much is it him? And I think that that's like a really interesting tug of war you play for the movie, where it's like your natural guttural reaction is revulsion, is fear. And then there's the, oh, but he didn't want this to happen to him. And then there's the, yeah, but he also kind of like leans into it. And then there's, oh, but he has these weird, creepy, like nesting instinct things. Like, yeah, but you can kind of see it in his eye in the beginning of the movie. So I don't know. Good pick. Interesting pick.
Yeah, that scene where he goes to the bar and really tears that guy apart during that scene, the arm wrestling scene, to this day burned in my memory, because as a kid,
it's an appropriate amount of goo.
I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that as a kid, because I remember feeling bad for him, because, you know, he's in the bathroom and all of a sudden his fingernails just start coming off. And I remember just being so sad, but so terrified too, the revulsion. But then he goes and busts that guy's arm. I was like, what the fuck? And then he picks up that chick and it's like, ugh. It really is true. Like, he does actions that really are rooting for his downfall. But then you think about it and it's like, but that's not him. That's the result of this awful tragedy that he's befallen due to his own making. It's a perfect pick.
Thank you.
Listen,
David Cronenberg, best to ever do it.
Maybe
Not a good
he's that
gynecologist,
way
but a good director.
because flies have such a short lifespan, so they really have to truly be like YOLO, because you only live once, but you only live a very short time.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum really goes YOLO.
He'd like to be the first insect politician.
Come on. We've elected a lot of bugs to Washington.
That's true.
Lizards.
We've got lizard people. We've got bugs.
The works.
Oh, damn. Please don't be a bug. Please don't. Oh, we got a bug.
I will say, and maybe this is a good transition, but on the topic of sympathetic horror characters, I'm going to throw out Leatherface. I'm gonna throw that in the mix, because sort of for what we were talking about with Barbarian, like, Leatherface is simple. He is definitely mentally handicapped to some degree. He is essentially a child in these films.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely has that kind of impression about him, and he was raised in the most fucked up family imaginable. The stuff he's doing is just normal to him. He doesn't understand that he is like hurting people, you know, and what he's doing. And I think especially in the second one, like, I think that's what the sequels get wrong about Leatherface. They make him just like a hulking monster. But like, what makes Leatherface interesting, I think, in the first two is that he is just kind of a child that is truly does not understand his own strength and what he's doing to people.
He's a sweet boy. He really is.
It's Bubba, our baby boy.
Yeah.
You see the glee when he's got the makeup on the mask at dinner and he's just like laughing and stuff. Like, he's just a little boy.
Well, yeah, I remember. Well, when we watched that, I don't want to go too. Well, we should just go into it. I mean, fuck it. But like when he's at the dinner table and he's put on his lovely makeup for the lovely dinner, I was like, oh, this is like one of the first documented girl dinners. Because as we saw it was like girl dinner. It's all in the meat.
Oh, God. Well, yes, we are here now. Thank you for onboarding us to that, Dalton. We are talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper. And we are talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 from 1986, also directed by Tobe Hooper.
So we're kicking off with a double feature?
We sure are. Double the movies, double the guests.
This is such a special episode. God.
So, I guess what we typically like to do is go around and ask everybody what their first exposure to the movie was. So, I'll throw to our guests first. When did you guys come in contact with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
My first exposure, I was not a horror person growing up, and in fact, really only been diving a lot into horror movies since I started doing this podcast with Dalton. But my first time viewing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was in a horror and cult films class in my junior year of college. So I didn't see it until my 20s. And at the time, I don't think I was interested in engaging with it. Wherever I was in my head, it did not really stick with me other than the impression that I think I brought with it, which was, it's a big, snuff movie. You know, it's just about watching people scream and there's blood flying around. And I hadn't seen it since until this week, rewatching it for this. And I really like it a lot more now for reasons that I think Dalton will probably illustrate, because they kind of explained it to me before we watched it. And now I really like it.
Lovely.
I had never seen the sequel before.
So, you know, it actually took me a while to get to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm a big horror fan, but I think as I was really going back and watching all the classics, I sort of saved Texas Chainsaw for last. I remember as a kid being really afraid of it because of like the marketing of like, this really happened and they're still out there somewhere, you know, which was like a big marketing hook for I think the original and the remake that would have happened when I was like 13. So I avoided it for a long time because I was kind of scared of it, you know, and like most horror movies that I was scared of growing up, when I actually visited them, I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as it was in my mind, like Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. The two movies that like kind of were as bad as they were in my mind are Hellraiser and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think what Dylan's alluding to is that we talked in our Halloween episode about how, at least for me, like horror movies are very fun. I really like, they're sort of like amusement park haunted houses where it's like you're kind of watching just to see how they get you, you know, and it's like, ooh, you got me real good, that's a gnarly kill, or ooh, that surprised me, or like that grossed me out, that made me jump, you know, but it's kind of like it's all in good fun. But then there are some horror movies that make you feel bad and like make you really confront your body and your mortality in like a very visceral way, and I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is maybe like the most effective, well, maybe not most effective. Martyrs really fucked me up, the French movie, but
that's also on the list this year.
I've never seen that.
Oh, that's also on my October horror movie list this year. I watched that for the first time this year.
You did watch it?
Yeah, Martyrs. That is a pretty brutal movie.
Yeah, no movie has ever made me feel as bad as Martyrs. Like it really stuck with me in a really intense way. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like that for me too, where I was like, ooh, this is like, I feel like kind of sick. Like this is not because it's like, it's not bloody. It's really not that gory at all. And I was actually reading on Wikipedia that Tobe Hooper, bless his heart, he apparently didn't make it very gory because he was hoping for a PG rating. And my guy, like, I know PG ratings were like a little looser in the 70s, you know, for a long time. But
I can make
my
this
man,
for kids.
You thought that it was the blood that was going to make this movie an R. You
Lord.
sweet summer child. But
Once we get to the hitchhiker, PG's out the window. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's very gnarly. It really makes its point effectively that like humans are meat. Like, oh, you think you're different than like the cattle being slaughtered at the beginning of the movie? No, you are the same meat that you eat. And we are all just, as mortal as anything else on this earth, and it really sticks that in a very visceral way. So I watched it a few years ago. It's not a movie I revisit all the time because it is very intense. And then I just saw part 2 for the first time last year because I had heard so much about how different it was. And, it was on Shudder, I think. And so I gave it a shot and loved it. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it. But that's sort of my experience with the 2 movies.
Lovely.
Nice.
I do think that is, the way to boil this movie down to its like most basic elements. You're right. It is a film about meat, which is what makes it so viscerally upsetting.
Yeah.
Really quick, I was exposed to the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie by visiting the Experience Music Project Museum in Seattle when I was a kid, which is kind of where my interest in horror movies really started, because maybe they still have, a standing exhibit in their basement that's all about horror movies. And they have like a couple of props from various different movies, and then they have screens playing like 5-minute little documentary segments about the movies. And the talking head in almost all of those is a director who my mileage varies pretty wildly on, Mr. Eli Roth.
Yeah.
But he was talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I had recently watched Psycho for the first time, and he talks about how in Psycho, that's a movie where from, the moment it starts, you feel like you're in safe hands, because Alfred Hitchcock is just a master of classical Hollywood filmmaking, and you feel like you know what he's doing, and even as, disturbing as the movie becomes, you're in the hands of someone who is in control. When you watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you feel like you are watching a movie that you are not supposed to be watching. That was made by a fucking maniac. And that always stuck with me. And at the time, I wasn't really watching a lot of horror movies because growing up, I was just a very anxious kid. And I was like, that just sounds like the most fucked up thing imaginable. And similarly to what you were saying, Dalton, I built it up in my head as like, oh, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And then I watched it and I was like, yeah, just about. That's
it's an intimidating movie.
I am haunted now. And then I believe my brother, he's like a massive fan of these movies and is very jealous of you two right now. But he exposed me to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I was delighted by that movie. I love the Evil Dead franchise, and I love it when a horror franchise takes its second movie and goes, all right, well, we freaked everybody out with the first one. Let's have some fun with it. And
it's such an effective move.
Texas Chainsaw 2 does.
Yeah. For my experience, again, very similar to what everyone has said. I was a big fan of horror in high school and college, and it just took me years to get around to watching Texas Chainsaw for the exact reasons that have been talked about, where it was very successfully marketed as something that was actually uncomfortable, something that is difficult to watch, difficult to experience, and also because it was quote unquote inspired from true events. And, horror films are very much escapism, right? Yeah. It's fun. And so when you learn that something is inspired from an actual grisly event, that doesn't make me want to seek it out more. That actually makes me want to maybe hold off, because the fact that this could have actually happened, that's not so fun. The fun thing about horror movies is knowing that this is all people in monster makeup and fake blood and that kind of stuff. And it was you, Zach, that showed me Texas Chainsaw for the first time. I think it was last year. And I liked it, and I quite like it. I liked it more on a rewatch. This was my second time viewing the film, and it's not terrifying. It's really not that scary. What it is disgusting. This is a gross film. And I remember that the first time I watched it, just being caught off guard by how disgusting it is. And on a rewatch, I was like, that's right. This movie is bloody disgusting.
There has maybe never been a movie where you just know it smells crazy in there.
Yeah, you know that was a smelly set. A hot West Texas set.
Kind of like what you were saying with like the reputation of everything of like, oh yeah, it's scary, it's uncomfortable. A movie that has a similar reputation is actually The Exorcist. But I feel like there's a difference because The Exorcist has a sheen of professionalism to it. Like, even though like there were all the reports of like, oh, people fainting and vomiting, watching The Exorcist, you watch it and you know you're watching a movie. Like, it is clear this is a Hollywood film. These are actors. These are effects. And as intense as it may be, Texas Chainsaw, like you were saying, like has that amateurish quality to it where like it feels just more visceral for some reason. Like there's something about it. You forget that you're watching a movie, and it does feel like you're watching a really fucked up thing happen.
Right, because the artifice still exists, but it's different from, like I said, it's got less polish. Mm-hmm. It has certainly not a documentary feeling exactly, but there is a certain degree to which we are tuned to suspend disbelief at a certain level. And this just feels slightly askew from that. Like, obviously you're watching a movie. There are cuts. There is score. But because it doesn't have that studio polish, it catches you off guard.
I will say also, I think having watched this and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 in close succession, 16 millimeters the scariest film gauge. Like an easy way to make your film scary is to film it in 16 millimeter. And I think that actually does help because while it's not a found footage movie, the fact that it kind of feels like it was made on someone's like home camera or something gives it a more immediate quality where it's like it does just kind of trigger something in your brain that's like, this is someone's home movie. And it's like, it's not even part of the structure of the film, but like, it just feels more real because of the film gauge. And it's a stupid thing, but I think it does actually make a difference.
I was going to say it is kind of like the Blair Witch Project of the 70s. It is that movie that kind of took people by storm. It was like, oh, this is just different. This is not a Hollywood film. This feels real. But Alexis, what about you? Your experience with this, was this your first time or had you seen it before?
Are you talking to me? As the only person that has not seen these movies. So I've actually seen like a bunch of the remakes. Like I've said, told you guys, I don't actively really seek out horror on my own so much anymore, but only because I watched so much fucking horror growing up as a child and am legitimately like traumatized by my middle sister by that shit. Like one of our favorite movies to watch was Child's Play and fucking Nightmare on Elm Street. And as soon as the Saw movies came out, she's so about her gratuitous violence. She loves that shit. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is right up her alley. That was like one of our favorite movies to just like throw on to be like kind of sisterly zen and just like lay down in the bed. And we're just like, oh, these people are just like dying horrifically. I just want to know though, like if this ever happens to us, like, will you kill me? And like, don't save me, kill me, because I don't actually really want to suffer. And that's like, it's like that sister pact we got going on, and it's all between the remakes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So this is a very interesting one because it really does feel like a snuff film. I woke up really, really early this morning to watch both of these movies, and I felt dead inside.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that did the movies any favors, but I was definitely just like, wow. Yeah, no, the sky's so blue. It on film, gorgeous. So fucking pretty. I'm like, did they put a fucking filter on that shit? Because that shit was gorgeous, but it definitely felt like a snuff film. Because like just the way that the camera moves, it's like somebody's, like you guys said, like not professional exactly, you know. Like, are these people even actors? Right.
Like,
it's interesting.
But even though the not professional aspect of it, despite that, if I were to make a list of like the 20 most iconic shots in horror film history, it would be really hard not to make all 20 of them Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, there are so many just really gorgeously framed and lit. I mean, just the fact when you enter the house and there's the door with the red paint and the mounted animal heads. Good Lord, is that an image, you know, like looking into like the foyer of the house.
Yeah, I love walking up there at hip height with Pam.
Yeah,
as they're walking in.
When you see the sky, like how blue the sky is, you're like, if there's anything Tobe Hooper likes, it's a low angle of a girl in short shorts. But like, it is a really iconic
and God bless him for
shot.
Oh yeah, I mean, watching this, like you guys were saying, like I would argue that potentially, like the two most iconic final shots in any horror movie, bar none, are back to back in this movie.
Yes.
Sally laughing in the back of the pickup,
covered in blood,
and Leatherface doing his chainsaw dance in the road,
with silhouetted with the sun behind him.
Yeah,
gorgeous. Like, this is so masterful. It is so masterful. I was just going to say one of my favorite shots is where the character Jerry, played by Alan Danziger, is walking into the field. And it's like a Star Wars shot where he's going amongst the tall grass and this giant sun is behind him silhouetted. And you just see the texture of the heat causing as it's hitting the ground. Like, it is just such a beautiful movie. It's incredible. And I can see how so many horror films trace their visual aesthetics back to Texas Chainsaw. Partly why I enjoyed X so much was because, okay, it's just Texas Chainsaw. That's why it looks so good.
I want to know, is this the first time somebody has been hung up on a meat hook in a horror movie? Because that is one of my favorite moves in horror movies, is when somebody just gets on a fucking meat hook. And I want to know, is this the movie that did it first? Because now I have to just, bow down a little bit.
I feel like it must be.
Probably
right?
at least the most iconic.
Yeah. That's a good question. Listeners, do your research for us. Was this the first
filmmagerspod@gmail.com?
Because when it comes to meat hooks, Alexis is hooked.
I want to say yes, but then we recently watched The Black Cat, which features what was it? Boris Karloff being flayed. And I was like, I would not have expected the first on-screen flaying to happen in like 1932, And
it is nuts. It is really, like, they don't get super graphic with it because, I mean, it's pre-code.
It's like in silhouette,
but it's better that way. But it is, it's surprisingly, shockingly violent.
But I do think one of the things that has made this film such an enduring classic is the fact that it convinces you that it is so amateurish and that it is so like a snuff film, and yet the craft is there on every level. Like, it. If you look beneath your like initial impression of it, like, it is a masterpiece of shot composition and pacing, and like just everything is there, and usually it's one or the other, either, wow, this looks really amateurish, and it is, or, it's got that sheen to it. But like, I've never seen a movie strike that balance like Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, I was like so dead inside watching it, but at the same time I was like, damn, wow, like, this guy really... He's got a lot of really interesting angles going on for a lot of these shots. It's just like, I don't know, just things that I guess I don't normally expect, because like things are, and there's a very large selection of horror movies these days. And, some of them can get like really boring. So it was so nice to see a really early one, like, be so inventive with the compositions.
Yeah, Alexis, The first time I watched this, I was not like seeing it first thing in the morning. I was not really exhausted when I watched it, but I also kind of felt dead inside too. So I don't think it's just the context of how you watched it. I genuinely think that your first exposure to the original Texas Chainsaw, it doesn't inspire joy within you. Well, it really doesn't.
No, it's not meant to.
It is a difficult watch.
I think that something you said to me when I first showed you Texas Chainsaw 2 is that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like a quintessentially 1970s movie, yes. And Texas Chainsaw 2 is like
quintessentially
so
80s.
1980s.
Yeah.
And I think part of that like 70s aesthetic is just like, the disillusionment with the, notion of America as like a, general good in the world, and, this mounting anxiety that everything is kind of crumbling around us. Our institutions are falling. The president is a criminal.
The 70s zeitgeist was fueled by nihilism, and the 80s zeitgeist was fueled by cocaine. And look no further than the Texas Chainsaw and Chainsaw 2.
Yeah,
well, there is also
that Ted Bundy was getting caught up, because I know it was during the 70s, but like that's another portion of the disillusionment is the concept of
that's true.
Violence
the rise of the serial killer,
and you might not know that the nice guy down your street is a fucking serial killer.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a really good point.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. Go for it.
That's all, sort of illustrated in the beginning of the film, where you're hearing the news in the background, and every single news story is violence,
yes.
Which, was Hooper's intention. Like, this movie was largely inspired by like the Vietnam War and all the graphic imagery coming out of there. And then just like the ceaseless violence over that really long running news report at the beginning of the film. Yeah. Really sets the tone for it.
That's kind of
like that big construction site in Atlanta that collapsed and killed a bunch of people. Go ahead, Alexis.
Nick. I didn't.
No, go for it.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of an interesting
I just said
tie-in,
a good example.
You think about like the God damn it! You think about the perception.
We're shutting up.
How,
Alexis, go.
America said that the Viet Cong, like all the people in the jungle and stuff, that they're just like savages, and then instead you displace that kind of idea and you put it into the American backyard, and there's just some savages waiting to fucking catch you.
The horror of this movie, comes from the family unit, which, used to be a source of safety, and now it's that's where the madness lives.
Yeah, and purely masculine too, right? Like this sort of patriarchal and even like the grandfather, which I'll sidebar, an incredible effect, because I thought he was a prop until he started sucking the blood out of Pam's finger. Pam, right?
Yeah.
And amazing, way much better makeup than in the sequel. But you have I think it's part of the Vietnam thing really nails it, because it's the idea that the good old American values are perhaps hideous. And down to the fact that, we are a country that loves beef. And I'm not going to listen. I consider Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be like the best like PETA ad ever made.
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm not a vegetarian. In fact, the very morning after I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I went to a steakhouse with my parents in Midtown and had an incredible 8-ounce filet.
We're getting burgers after this.
We're getting burgers after this.
I had bibimbap last night.
Wow, it's the idea of okay, so here's your Alexis, with the fucking family unit thing, I think that'll be contextualizing all my thoughts. It is like this American family, and they cook together, and they're like rural, real, what we would now think of as like real America thing, right? And they're just fucking terrifying, and they were so willing to dehumanize everyone outside of their unit.
One of the most successful setups and payoffs, I think, in horror history is them talking in the van about the way they used to kill the cows with the sledgehammer.
Yes.
And sometimes it wouldn't kill them, and they'd have to take a second hit. And then the first kill of the movie is the guy getting hit with the sledgehammer, and then the way that he spasms on the ground, the same way they talk about the cattle doing, is so viscerally effective. Like, that's the moment where you go, maybe I shouldn't eat meat anymore.
Yeah.
Like, watching a human do the exact same thing, and then Leatherface has to hit him again, and he stops, and it's like, fuck. Like, it's... that moment, I think, is just one of the most effective kills in the history of horror cinema.
And it works also the idea of you have these characters who are so attached to the old way of things, when the old way of things is horrifying, right? But like, that's traditionalism, man. That is
conservatism.
That's conservatism is like, yeah, they came up with this new way to do it that's supposed to be better, but we do it the old fashioned way. It's like, yeah, the old fashioned way fucking sucks, dude. And you're kind of a monster for doing it. Not to say that the new way is like really necessarily. I'm weird in that, like, I actually ethically completely get down with vegetarianism. I just am weak and can't stop eating meat.
Right.
But it's really interesting that, like, it becomes an interesting sort of intersectional protest movie, and it's not just about this one idea that we take for granted. It kind of does paint the whole, like, a good old boy establishment very poorly.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're all talking about the whole meat aspect of it, because I personally, I'm not vegetarian, but I don't eat red meat. And I'm currently dating someone who is vegan. And on a rewatch with this a few days ago, with that new lens, I completely agree. Like, this is... If Troll 2 is anti-vegetarianism, the iconic anti-vegetarian film, then Texas Chainsaw is the anti-meat.
God, we are playing all the beloved horror hits on this episode.
It's
Alien Resurrection, Troll 2, what else do we have?
Yeah, I watching it, I felt good about the fact that I haven't had red meat for a while, because not that I feel like, oh, hell yeah, like I'm not with these types of folks, but just like, this movie doesn't sell me on red meat.
It sure doesn't.
It doesn't make me crave a steak, especially, you know, when they're like, oh, what's that awful smell? Roll up the windows, and it pans out to this like industrial meat farm, and it has these close-up shots of cows, and you see the whites of their eyes because they're fucking stressed out.
Yeah, and then you see that same shot of Sally towards the end.
Yeah, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, like, this is really awful, and it's a very progressive film in that regard, if you read it that way, but it is very progressive.
One other thing I'd like to bring up, since, you know, this is a film that, you know, deals with the kind of horror and madness that, you know, comes from, you know, America as we know it. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the person who's most aware of the horror and violence lurking in our society is Franklin, who's, you know, disabled. He's in a wheelchair and, you know, is the most vulnerable person, because all of our, you know, dumb fucking, you know, 20-somethings are all like, oh yeah, no, let's go into this creepy house. Oh, I'll walk over there and it'll be fine because the world exists to be convenient for me. And they fucking leave Franklin behind. They just leave him places all the goddamn time, and he is the only person who is like, this is bad news. We should go. So I don't know. I like that aspect of it, and I think that I started to, you know, understand this as a movie kind of about the, you know, just horror of existing in this fucking insane country we live in is by, you know, focusing on Franklin.
Yeah. That's Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Mick.
Well, I was just really quickly, I will say that, you know, we're throwing heaps of praise onto this film, and deservedly so. But there is one thing that I don't jive with this movie, and it's even on a rewatch, is our scream queen, played by Marilyn Burns, Sally Hardesty. She's fantastic, but part of my issue with this movie is when you get to a certain point, the movie is just screaming. Like, that's
a feature, not a bug, baby.
To me, it just keeps going and going and going, and then we get to the dinner scene and she's screaming, and then she escapes the dinner scene and she's screaming, and it's like, I feel like there could have been more we did with her character than just have her be screaming the whole time. But aside from that, not trying to get on a soapbox here, but just like, it's constant and it gets into my head. And I'm like, okay, this is partly what makes this movie just so exhausting to watch is it's just screaming and people laughing and screaming and yelling and screaming and laughing. And it's at a certain point, it really just goes to chaos. But
that's what I like about it.
Some people like that. I myself find it's a bit of a chore. That's probably my only thing I don't like about it.
Oh, go ahead, Alexis.
Well, if you were a cow, you wouldn't be able to scream, so maybe you should be hearing her screams the whole time.
It's human privilege. Mm-hmm. For me, I think that sells like sort of the snuff film, like this is really happening part of it, because like her performance, I really do believe she has just gone insane from what she is seeing. And I'm like, yeah, I would too. I would just lose my fucking mind. I wouldn't be articulate. Like, it is very grating, but it maintains that pit in your stomach where you're like, Jesus, someone let her out of this. Like, this is like, it makes you feel insane because of how insane she's going. And like, I definitely hear what you're saying, that like, it's grating, but for me, it also feels very real versus like, they talk about on Halloween, like, John Carpenter had like a number system with Jamie Lee Curtis where it's like, okay, fear wise, like here you're at a 4, here you're at a 6, just so she wasn't at a 10 the whole time. But like here it's kind of like, no, the second you see Leatherface, you're at a 10 and you're not leaving 10 until you're gone, and that does kind of ring true to me in a way.
It's the very thing I think that makes Chainsaw Massacre 2 not work for me though. I don't know if we're ready to move on to 2, but
I would be down to get into it. I just wanted to say, that madness that Sally's feeling, like very much echoed by the nature of this shoot, which was, grueling and hot and like pulling days that, would be fucking illegal now. And that last shot of her in the pickup is a pickup shot. They shot the ending and then apparently didn't get it. And she thought she was out. And then she got a call being like, hey, we need you to come back and shoot the ending of this movie again. Which I think that that mania, it very much comes across.
I actually would argue that part of what I don't love is all the screaming, but that because of all of the screaming makes that final shot work even more. How that screaming has turned to maniacal laughter. Really. So that I would argue that makes the final shot more effective. But yeah, let's move on because
let's move on to the movie where she's now in a coma. Alexis.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Yeah, I have a side note before we get out of the first one, and that is that so many movies remind me of you guys because I'll just have this moment where like the white man walks into this house just willy-nilly, and I always think to myself, yep, that would have been Zach. Or that would have been Mick. Yeah, 100%. Because we had a full-on conversation, like, after we all saw Barbarian about how you guys were like, yeah, of course I'd go into the basement. And I was like, fuck no, I wouldn't go into the basement. Are you fucking kidding me?
Go look for clues.
Well, I would of course I'd go into the basement. It's just a bed and a bucket and a camera.
I told you guys I would not save
It's a bed and a bucket.
I wouldn't even save the beautiful Scandinavian man,
They're down there in the room with the tape measure.
No, they would. They'd be right down there. But I love that you brought up the character who is disabled and automatically experiences the world in a different way. It kind of has the same crossover in Barbarian where, it's a woman who experiences the world in a different way, and a woman of color. Right. And so she's like, I got the heebie-jeebies. I'm not fucking doing that. And what happens? Some white man walks where he shouldn't be fucking walking, thinking everything's going to be fine because I float through life, right? Yeah.
And I love that this is a thing that's been acknowledged in horror movies forever. We were talking about Halloween 3 a while earlier, and there's a character early in the movie he's a black man who works the night shift at this gas station, I think. And he's the guy who discovers a stark raving man who is trying to tell people about the danger, but he can't articulate himself. And he delivers him to the hospital, and he's like, hey, just want you to know, I found him like this. I don't have anything to do with what's happening here. He seemed like he needed help. I wanted to help. And as it becomes clear that this is the beginning of a much longer story, he just nopes out. He's just like, I'm not going to be involved in this. You can all pursue this story. He just quietly just leaves. He's like, I don't think I'll be doing any of this.
Yeah.
Well, our next film opens with some white men making poor choices.
Yeah.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So, I recently followed both Dylan and Dalton on Letterboxd, so I have a little bit of a sense of how Dylan felt about Texas Chainsaw 2. This was not your favorite.
Yeah, I want to preface this by saying I love when a sequel does something different. And especially if it comes from, like much later, the idea of I have the opportunity to tell a story here that's going to have a built-in audience, and I want to challenge them. Dalton has done this a number of times on our show, where a sequel to something or a part of our franchise will go in a really crazy direction that's going to be divisive. See The Bride and Frankenstein, the sort of slasher movie, sort of dark comedy. Mm-hmm. That was a sequel to the gothic horror Frankenstein story.
Very polarizing among our fans.
Yeah. For me, I was really plugged into Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 for as long as it was doing something different. This is a story set 13 years later, and it follows a radio DJ who goes by Stretch, and she is talked into playing a recording that was made by two guys Sorry, I'm now going into plot summary, but
please.
We talked about those two white guys making poor choices. They are two frat boys on a car phone heading towards a big party weekend in Dallas, where Texas and Oklahoma will be playing a big football game. And one
of those guys is named Rick the Prick.
Just the fucking worst guys. And they keep calling in to harass this DJ on the radio station at K Okla. And they're in their various shenanigans. They provoke a pickup truck on the road that turns out to be the truck where Leatherface is there, and they get themselves cut in half or chopped into pieces on the air, or not on the air, but on a recorded line because they're in the middle of calling this radio station. And it's like, okay, now we have a story about, you have this DJ. She has a tape of this chainsaw killing that's supposed to sort of vindicate a detective that has been trying to prove the Chainsaw Massacre really happened for a decade, because he is the uncle of two of the victims from the original film. This character, this lieutenant, I guess, played by Dennis Hopper.
Lefty.
And Dusty. Sorry, Lefty Wrightson.
Doesn't matter.
He's lefty.
Sure. Love it.
Nice.
And so you have a very different story. It's not set in a singular location, right? You have a lot of stuff that happens in the radio station, but there's also there's this chili cook-off happening, and you have this backdrop between the whole thing that this is a huge party weekend in Dallas. There's a lot of people gathered, and they're all going to be eating chili. And the whole time it feels as if it's building towards a very different climax than the original. But instead of going and following that thread forward and being like, okay, we're going to do an out in the open, sort of rampaging monster through that sort of bloodbath where the slasher is an intruder into a crowded space. We end up going into an underground lair controlled by the same family from the original movie, who are making famously great chili from human beings. And then they just redo the dinner scene in that setting, almost beat for beat. And almost totally lose interest because the tone of this movie is so goofy and so wild and so fucking Power Rangers a lot of the time that trying to show me, I mean, the performance of the guy with the plate in his head really does feel fully like a Bulk and Skull type character from Power Rangers. And
Chop Top.
It's so
Bill
big.
Moseley.
And then they do exactly the same shit they did in the first movie that was so effective, but it doesn't feel like anything because it's not like it's cranked up to 11 really in any other way than how much giggling this one actor is doing. And I got annoyed by I felt like they gave up on doing a new thing and instead went to do an old thing not as well.
I have a counterpoint to my co-host.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll get to it later.
Oh, I was going to say that it's interesting. I had fully never considered the notion that we could build to a conclusion that, takes place in more of a big crowded setting with this football game that's being seeded. And I think it's because once we get into the lair, I'm mostly just delighted by what Mick once described as the largest set ever built.
Yeah,
I just want to live there. I just want to live in that set. Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was saying to my girlfriend last night, I would live here. But I do think that that's kind of an interesting point because I definitely would not have minded seeing this build to a different climax. Now, would I sacrifice the chainsaw battle between Dennis Hopper and Leatherface?
Not in a million years.
I don't know that I would. That's one of my favorite things, just of all things that can be.
I was going to say, I really like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I might love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And I think it says something.
Here's the hot take.
Yeah, I think it just says something about my personal taste of the fact that the Sawyer family are like top dogs when it comes to chili competitions.
Well, yeah, it's Drayton Sawyer, and that one lady thinks he's kind of cute.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, it's just one of those hard-shelled peppercorns. It's so wacky, and it's so amazing. And also, something that I did not realize from the first movie is that the worst mistake the Sawyer family made was killing Franklin. Because what they didn't understand is that Lieutenant Lefty would be hunting them for years after this. And
is equally as insane as all of them.
Yes, I would say that
arguably more.
I was going to say the most frightening person in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is Lieutenant Lefty, played by Dennis Hopper.
Who has said that this is the worst movie he was ever in.
I could not disagree more. When he goes to the chainsaw store and is just checking out the chainsaws, and the reaction of the store owner just kind of like gleefully like
God, what a scene. It's
so ridiculous. I love it. It's so
fuck
good.
Fuck that guy. He literally puts a hand out for stretch. A literal hand, like a skeleton's arm attached to a hand. He's like, grab onto this. And I'm like, that shit's gonna literally like fucking fall off. And what happened? It fucking fell off.
Exactly what you think will happen.
He also leaves her for death at the radio station. And then when she's like, where were you? He's like, oh, I was using you as bait. And he's like, what are you talking about? Why would you think Leatherface wouldn't kill her? You had no way of knowing that. Like that he was just going to fall in love with her and let her go. Like you did just leave her to die.
Also, genuinely so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable with the Leatherface stretch scenes. Let me tell you, there is nothing more unnerving for me as a person with a vagina to have somebody rest their chainsaw on your crotch. Yeah. I was so stressed, guys. I was so stressed. And I was dead inside, and I was still so stressed.
It is almost like Tobe Hooper knew that the book Men, Women, and Chainsaws was going to be written. And he was like, here, let me just dump some gasoline on everything you're talking about in terms of the final girl having to take on masculine traits and unman the, gender non-conforming gender presenting male antagonist. Like, let me just prove exactly what your whole thesis is. Let me just provide some supporting evidence for a whole chapter of your book.
The best lefty gag, I think, is when he shows up at the end with bandoliers that just have extra chains on them for the chainsaws instead of ammunition. Yes. It's so good. Never seen that before.
It really is fantastic. And then again, Chop Top. What a wonderful character.
Dylan, Chop Top was getting under your skin a little.
I don't enjoy Chop Top. I think it's really it's telling in all the wrong ways for me that, like, okay, this is an actor who made like a Texas Chainsaw parody fan film and sent it to Tobe Hooper. And Tobe Hooper saw it and then for years was like, if I ever make a sequel, I gotta have this guy in the movie. I'm like, this guy? Okay. I understand that he's embodying the tone of the film, that it is like high camp as well as gore, but like he's at like a 15. I need it down at a 9. Like when we're at that, we're talking about how effective the screaming is at the end. I know we're not all on the same page about that particular thing, but like I found like all of the screaming and noise and cackling of the end of the first movie to be really unnerving and just really just like so keeps you so locked into the reality of that film. In this one, it is the thing that keeps me from ever engaging with anything. Like he just can't stop. He's giving a performance that would be stagey in a fucking stadium. Like I can't get with it. And like, I would really have loved if he had died in like the first 5 minutes of the movie.
I love Chop Top. I do think on a rewatch, some of this segments, especially with Chop Top, could use some additional editing. Some things go on a little too long, where he's like, sometimes Chop Top starts to repeat a bit, and it's kind of like, well, we already got that bit once. We could probably cut out the second instance of it.
The DJ scene, right? The scene where he's like he's in there in the hippie outfit and he's asking for a tour. It just goes on and on and on, and it's not even like it's getting bigger. He's already up here, and there's nowhere to go.
That's kind of why I love it.
Yeah, this is not something that I really take any issue or disagreement.
Yeah, you guys are right, absolutely right.
I don't think you guys are wrong at all.
Well, it's a better personal taste, right? I personally, I couldn't rock with it,
and I do like Chop Top.
Yeah.
Now
he does.
Can I go on a bit of a rant about this movie?
Please.
Permission to rant. First of all, I want to address the idea of this having a different climax. Apparently, Tobe Hooper did film some very long deleted scenes that did have them going wild in public. There's actually a part in the movie where Chop Top talks to Leatherface about going out to the movies. And apparently there was a whole sequence of them like killing moviegoers coming out of the theater. And a lot of like more public killings that were cut.
Okay,
that's interesting.
See them go to the movies.
Yeah, I would like to see those deleted scenes. But so I really like this movie. I don't think I like it as much as the original. Well, it's probably more enjoyable to me than the original, but I don't think it's as good of a movie.
Right. As you were saying, you weren't supposed to enjoy the original.
Yes.
This one you are. Like we talked about the two categories. You have your funhouse horror movie and you have your Memento Mori type horror movie. And this one goes full funhouse to the extent that big set.
It is a funhouse.
It's funhouse and he jumps out of things.
Literally
it's like, I gotcha.
An old theme park.
Yeah, it's literal theme park stuff. As we've said, I really like when a direct. It really feels like Tobe Hooper was faced with the prospect of making a sequel to Texas Chainsaw and knew how ridiculous of an idea that was. Like on every frame of this feels like a tacit acknowledgement that like, you can't make a sequel to that movie. Like it almost feels like a parody of like modern day requels in some moments. Like when they find Franklin's wheelchair, like this iconic horror, thing, but it's kind of funny. Like it has like kind of a faux reverence to it. Almost like it's parodying our current reverence for those kinds of callbacks, But my reading of this movie, beyond just like Tobe Hooper wanted to do something different, it feels like the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre is our view of this family from an outsider perspective, from the perspective of these teens who have stumbled across them. While Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, they're the same family, but now it's from their point of view, where they are the main characters. Where the first movie, there's a lot of like far away shots, almost voyeuristic shots. We are very removed from this family, and we are watching it through these teens' eyes, where it's like, but you can tell in the first movie, they're funny, and they think what they're doing is kind of funny. But like, it doesn't read as funny to us, the audience, because if you're one of these teens stumbling across it, these people are psychotic, and it is terrifying how sort of gleefully they are destroying you and your friends. But then after that movie comes out, I think Tobe Hooper knew, like, oh, in the cultural zeitgeist, the stars of that movie in retrospect are Leatherface and the hitchhiker and the cook, you know? And so he's kind of playing with the idea of like, oh, you think they're the stars? Okay, they're the stars then. And we're going to see the world the way they see it, which is as this fucked up comedy where, you know, they are the center of the universe, you know, going about their nasty business. And I think that's a very interesting lens for this. It's more polished. It's more, you're right up there with Leatherface. Leatherface gets an arc. He has a crush, you know, like he's treated like a character romance that like is having a growth moment of like, ooh, like a comedy arc basically, which is like, oh, this disgusting guy with skin on his face has a little crush. And it's played for laughs. And that's why I actually think the recreation of the dinner scene is effective, because it basically is a shot for shot recreation, but from a different perspective now. And it's like, oh, this isn't viscerally terrifying this time. It's kind of like quirky and funny because you're seeing the same events play through a different lens. And then I think it wisely then diverts wildly from that again. As soon as the dinner scene ends, we're chainsaw fighting, Grandpa's pulling a grenade out, you know, like things get very Bugs Bunny again, like right away. But I think you need that moment of like, oh, remember the first movie? Let's recontextualize it now within this new framework and sort of let you see how different these perspectives are. So I kind of like that, but I do feel that like this is Tobe Hooper saying, okay, Leatherface is the main character now. Hope you fucking like it. You know, like it's gonna be goofy. Right. But it's still the sickness of it still shines through. It's still genuinely sickening when he's skinning that guy right in front of Stretch. And it's the jump scare of Leatherface coming out of the record room is like iconic. The light coming on and him just roaring out of there. Jesus Christ, that's scary. And the fact that it can still be so viscerally disgusting despite the comedic lens. The family's the same in both movies. I feel like the family doesn't change. Yeah. They're doing the same shit. They're responding to it the same way, but it just feels so different because of the way you're looking at it. Anyway, that's my rant. Okay.
Listen, I like what I can buy that. I can buy that take, but I can't buy into it. You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
Right. Yeah. Well, I like what you said about how this is a new perspective. They recontextualized the dinner because the first dinner from the first movie, there's bones and feathers and it's just meat on the table. Yes. I noticed in the sequel, there's vegetables on the table. There's scallions. There's red peppers. Eating healthier. So like. Yeah, it's like from their perspective, it's like, oh, no, this actually is kind of like a balanced meal that we're having here. Like, yeah, let's sit down to this. I also, again, I love that shot where he comes in through the record room and hits
Chop Top.
And he's rubbing his plate and he just randomly says, nom flashback.
Yeah, it is.
Things are
it
so
is
good.
I feel like that also, you know, plays into... that this movie is kind of like a joke on the notion of like, can you make a Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel? Like, you know, that first movie is so, you know, concerned with the horror of, you know, existing in a country where the Vietnam War is happening, and now it's a gag. I, as someone who really enjoys The Matrix Resurrections, I enjoyed this movie. Did we enjoy the most? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alexis.
So I've seen like a bunch of Rob Zombie movies because one of my former roommates just fucking loved Rob Zombie. So, I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses a few times, and that family reminds me so much of this family in some ways. And like now that I've seen this, it makes it very clear to me that like he clearly was kind of drawing on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actor who plays Chop Top is in those movies.
Yeah, Bill Moseley.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. See, I'm not as into those movies, but also I'm so sorry, but this fucking movie, when he gets like chainsawed in the ass, and then he's sitting there and he just goes, "Oh, I think that got my hems."
Yes.
Was so funny to
The small businessman always gets it in the
I
ass.
like that all the violence against the family is played for comedy and the violence against other people is very horrifying.
Yeah.
It really solidifies these people as like a cartoon family. That he gets a chainsaw in the ass and he's just sitting there like, well, Grandpa, guess this is it for us. It's not played as real at all, but when he's skinning the guy, you're seeing the sheets of skin and it's like, oh, that's fucking, and you're seeing
That's
his
nasty.
skinless face. Like that's horrifying, but the grandpa getting chainsawed in the crotch is like a
that's
gag,
funny.
Yeah. I mean, he got rid of his hemorrhoids. I love that for him.
Exactly. Who needs cream? I love how LG, one of his defining characteristics is he just hawks loogies. And when he's been skinned and he's alive again, you know that he's alive because the first thing he does is he hawks a loogie. That always gets me. That always
Looney
makes me
Tunes
laugh
shit.
so hard.
Such Looney Tunes stuff.
I would just like to know if everyone enjoyed the most iconic line in American cinema.
Oh, yeah.
Lick my plate, you dog dick.
Yeah, Chop Top is
That
iconic.
quote enters my brain once a day. It
Dog
just...
dick is such a good insult. That's like, I can't
really
believe that's
is.
not more popular. It's got the alliteration to it. You dog dick just feels really satisfying to say.
Yeah, something that I'm very proud of. Last night I went to dinner with my lovely girlfriend and we had just seen this movie. And when she doesn't finish all of her food, I will finish it. And when she looked down at her plate, she looked up at me at a full restaurant and said, "Lick my plate, you dog dick." And God damn it, I did. You bet I did.
That's a keeper.
Yep, that's a keeper.
Yep, really is.
Wow. Man, so... sorry.
I love Frank. I love Lefty so much. I just need to talk about his body language. Did you notice, like, he walks with his shoulders? Like, it looks like Dennis Hopper has a coat rack. Like he's hanging from a coat rack the whole movie. I just think his body language is just so... I've never noticed it before, but he's just so stiff in the shoulders, and it's one of my favorite Dennis Hopper characters, which is funny because he says this is the worst movie he's ever been in.
Hates it.
He's good in it. He does the job. He does the job.
Rest of the episodes going to come down to ranking all of Dennis Hopper's films to determine which is actually the worst film he's ever been in.
Yeah, I mean, the first...
I can already say that as much as I love Stuart Gordon, or it might be Brian Hughes, Space Truckers is not a good movie.
Yeah, no, Space Truckers is bad. I did like it, though. But I have to say, the first time I saw Texas Chainsaw 2, the first time we meet Lieutenant Lefty, I was like, oh, this is a West Texas, like, Lone Star sheriff type guy. This is like a Tommy Lee Jones character. Like, I could have seen Tommy Lee Jones playing this. But as the movie goes on, I stand correct. That is not a Tommy Lee Jones character. This is a Dennis Hopper character.
Yes. Yeah, it could be no one else.
Through. Yeah,
Yep.
He's tailor-made for that.
Question for my two co-hosts who love the film Elvis.
What? What's the question?
What does that sound?
That's not us.
Oh, sorry. There was just like a haunting, wailing horn I just heard.
Well, there's on our end either.
Well, that
sounds like a us problem.
That's comforting. Okay.
Show's haunted.
Show's haunted.
I would just like to ask, how did you guys feel about Leatherface's wiggle in this film?
Oh yeah, I was telling Zach before we started recording. I think recasting Leatherface with Bill Johnson was a great choice because you get the Leatherface wiggles, which is the cutest, most adorable thing I've ever seen. And then after, not only the Leatherface wiggles, but after him and Stretch have their very uncomfortable, intimate moment in the radio station, he does the wiggles, but then does this like weird humping thing with his chainsaw. And I'm like, right. Leatherface, my dude, tone it down a bit, buddy. Tone it down. Not appropriate.
Leatherface
too soon.
Fucking the bucket of ice with his chainsaw dick was an image that I will not be able to get out of my head anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm sure that that's exactly the way it's meant to be received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know. It's pretty subtle. I didn't quite get it.
I do love the last shot of the movie because it's just Stretch doing the fucking wiggle.
Yeah, she's doing the wiggles.
She's doing her own little chainsaw dance.
I think by the time I got to the end of the movie, I was like, oh my God, thank God I've finished these movies and it is in time to make it for this fucking podcast right now. But I was watching that and I feel like I was in the state of mania because like the hemorrhoid joke landed really hard with me. And then the wiggle for some reason was also just like, I have the giggles. That's not the emotion I thought I was going to come out of this movie with, but here we are.
Yeah, and also I agree with you, Dylan, with the first movie where when you meet Grandpa Sawyer, you think that's a prop, but actually it's an actor in makeup, and oh my God, Grandpa Sawyer is still alive. I love that this movie pulls that off again with Grandma Sawyer.
Oh yeah, right. Grandma. Because the grandpa feels
Sawyer.
more like an actor from the beginning, but the grandma I once again thought was not alive and was
same.
And then she starts moving.
Yeah, I was like, this is a shrine to Grandma Sawyer, and then like her stomach or hand gets ripped off, and then she starts twitching. I'm like, ugh, how is this possible? And then he's like, oh, you killed Grandma, you bitch!
It's all in the meat.
Grandpa Sawyer is so nasty too. Just like the way he like sucks on the finger in the first movie. Also, like, what's the vibe you get from Grandpa Sawyer? Because like he just keeps like dropping the thing. Like, does he not want to kill people anymore? Is he like over it?
He's weak.
You think it's like one of those things where he's like, put me out of my misery. I can't listen to you fucking idiots anymore. What's up?
Yeah.
In the first one, I'm sure it's just a commentary on they keep trying to give him the power to do it. And he just doesn't have the strength to actually do it. And they're completely delusional about what his situation is. And in the sequel, I have no idea. To me, they're just repeating the beat. I don't know what the intent is other than that's what happened in the first movie.
Grandpa
so
should
do
not
it here.
Still be alive.
No. Hey, I just diet. It does wonders.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that to this day, they're still trying to get Grandpa Sawyer to whack his meal, and he still cannot do it 13 years later, but they keep putting that mallet in his hand. Tom Savini did the makeup for this one.
Makeup's cool.
I think the makeup is cool. I do agree, though, Grandpa's makeup is more makeup-y in this one. And you're more convinced like, oh, that's an actor under makeup. In fact, it looks like he's actually improved his health. And I guess it's from that strong liquid diet. But he's looking a little better in the sequel. But I do love that close-up shot of Grandpa Sawyer where the camera just keeps pushing in on him more and more and more until literally his nose is nearly touching the lens. And I feel like the actor playing Grandpa Sawyer didn't know the camera was going to be going that close to him because he's just kind of shaking. Then the camera gets there and he just kind of does this Nicolas Cage thing where he just opens his eyes a little bit. I don't know. I love that. And the fact that his makeup still looks pretty damn good that close, I got to give Tom Savini props. He had a lot of work to do in this movie.
It's actually just now occurring to me that the family consistently propping up the grandfather and putting the hammer in his hand and hoping he does the right thing with it is a pretty apt illustration of the last few years of Dianne Feinstein's Senate career.
Wait, Dalton, I didn't even know she was sick.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah.
Damn.
Also, quick connection between these two films and one of my favorite podcasts, Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is that the first film to introduce the word Draculas?
It might be. I thought about that.
It might be.
In
He's a real Dracula.
In our universe, the Invisible Man, who is fictionally portrayed by John C. Reilly, only ever calls vampires Draculas, even though at one point that's a continuity error because nobody knows who Dracula is in our universe because there's no such thing as the novel or movie Dracula.
It's fine.
But it's
Don't
fine.
care.
I think this might be the origin, Franklin calling them Draculas.
Yeah, a whole family of Draculas.
Full circle.
Yeah. Well, do we have anything else on these films? I mean, we could talk about these forever. So, but I know we're running pretty long, so I'd just like to get everybody's final thoughts, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we've covered this. Go ahead, Alexis. Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, no, I really understood how married to like the booty shorts that Tobe Hooper is in the second movie.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn, we're just getting a lot of ass. I was like, oh, here come her legs again. Yeah. No, I mean, appreciated, but was it necessary? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's not a complaint. That's an observation from Alexis. Not complaining, just an observation.
Yeah, that's it.
I had such a good time with these movies. Again, I really like Texas Chainsaw. I think I love Texas Chainsaw 2. Having now spoken about this in depth with Dalton and Dylan, I think I have reframed the sequel a little bit more, where maybe I can look at it through more of a critical lens, and I probably will, because I will 1000% be watching that movie again. But I want to see more Texas Chainsaw, I think. I definitely want to see Halloween Season of the Witch now.
Yes, you do.
This is a fantastic way to launch spooky season with these two bangers.
Any final thoughts from our guests on these films?
Yeah, I would say so. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, my final word on it is that if an alien were to come down from space and say, I have heard of this thing called a horror movie, and I have 90 minutes before I have to get back to my planet, can you just show me the ultimate example of what this genre is? I would play the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it is sort of the perfect encapsulation in many ways of what the horror genre is and can be. The second movie, I'm not going to quite be that superlative with it, but I do think it is a great film for like a Halloween party. If you're having a bunch of people over and want to watch something kind of crazy and nasty, I'm probably more likely to rewatch Texas Chainsaw 2 more frequently than the original Texas Chainsaw, just because it is kind of a fun party watch.
And I'm unlikely to ever to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 again, but I also can respect the take of the sort of like, they think this is a comedy, so therefore it's a comedy. Mostly, I just enjoy the opportunity to get really in depth talking about the theme cinematography of movies that are like not as much by our generation now, but in the past would probably not have been looked at and picked apart with such a fine comb. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this is great.
Well, thank you for having us on. For coming on.
Thank you. Seriously.
This has been a delight. Is there anything that you two would like to plug? I know that I've heard rumors that there's some sort of a Comic-Con panel coming up in the near future.
Is that true?
We are taping it immediately after this. Well, after we're going to get McDonald's and then tape it. But our Phase 3 of the Dark Universe premieres on October 22nd. We are doing an episode where we're answering a bunch of fan questions, but also announcing our Phase 3 slate.
And it's, oh God, this is so much.
I'm not going to give any spoilers because I think this is going to air before that. But one thing I will say is that in our first season, we made 5 original movies.
Right, because we get the Mummy as our Iron Man, and then we made 4 more stories, and then our Avengers.
In Phase 2, we did 7 original movies. And in Phase 3, we will be doing, no joke, 15 original movies to round out our what we're calling the Death's Door saga of the Dark Universe, which will be sort of our
equivalent of the Infinity Saga.
Our equivalent of the Infinity Saga. So
we are going to be we go back and forth writing these scripts. They're usually scriptments, except for our like big Avenger style crossover, which we call the Dark Legion. We are each going to be writing a screenplay every 2 months, and we'll read them together on the air. And we'll be doing this Death's Door saga. Phase 3 will take us into the middle of 2025.
So now's the perfect time to jump onto the Dark
Good
Universe,
Lord.
find out what we've been doing over there. We have a couple recap episodes, or you can just binge straight through.
Start from the top. It's fun that way.
Or dive in with us on October 22nd. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Dylan and Dalton, where you can give us $5 a month. And we have a bonus podcast on there where we do things like rank the Halloween movies and talk about other stuff that aren't just Universal Monster things. So that's us. Are you afraid of the Dark Universe?
Amazing. Great. And we can find you on Instagram, and basically you're available on most podcast platforms, I'm assuming.
We're on all podcast platforms, and we're Dark Universe Pod on social media.
Hell yeah. Well,
Lovely.
Check them out, listeners.
Please listen to their show. I mean,
it's really wonderful.
I'm glad to hear you're doing so many more movies, because it seems like you guys aren't busy at all and aren't working hard enough.
My gosh. 15, Kevin Feige, he's looking over at y'all and just smiling with a nodding approval. That's
some
impressive.
of it is just because we put them out so often, and we do our big crossover scripts that we write together and produce with a full cast, that we needed to add more between our sort of equivalent of Infinity War and Endgame, so that we weren't doing that twice in a row. So we ended up extending it further.
This is all contingent on us surviving until then, and honestly, I can't promise that.
We'll do our best.
Oh, don't George R.R. Martin us. I'm waiting with bated breath.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of our show, next week we are watching a film that is a little bit more contemporary.
Yeah, we're really going to be changing up the vibe with this next film.
But still insanely weird. And that is David Pryor's 2020 horror film, The Empty Man.
The Empty Man!
The Empty Man. The Empty Man.
The Empty Man. The Empty Man. The Empty Man.
That stars James Badgedale and Stephen Root, who are, two of my favorite that guys. And, that might give you a hint as to what our big
amazing.
topic is.
I've only seen it once. I'm excited to rewatch it and discuss it with you guys.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a blast. And you can rent that movie on, Amazon Prime, YouTube, wherever you rent movies, or you can be like me and order the one physical release of it, which was a DVD that came out in Australia for $50. You can bid on it on eBay and win.
You are a true cinephile, my friend, and I salute you.
I can't have The Empty Man go away. No. I need guarantees that I'll be able to watch it. So that's where you can find The Empty Man, and you can find us at Film Majors Pod on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And, tell us your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw movies. Tell us your thoughts on the Spooktober list, which, again, is on our social media. Write us at filmmajorspod@gmail.com.
Hell yeah. And thank you again, Dalton and Dylan. It's fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. This is great.
All right, listeners. We'll catch you next week.